Test, test.
I think out. All right, everybody, we are going to get started tonight. I want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Tina Horlocker. I am chair of the Davis County Conservatives. If you're a member of my board, will you please stand? There are others, but Brian over here, and there are others. They'll probably, Richard right here, they'll come in. All right, so we are going to start with an opening prayer from Tom Parks.
Father, we thank you for our country. We thank you for the republic we have, and Lord, I ask you to help us to keep it. We ask you to be with the contestants tonight and help everybody to keep an open mind and listen to and choose the right person that you have for the position of sheriff of Davis County. We thank you for all these things and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, if everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, there's a lot going on in our world right now, as you all know. Things are coming at us faster than we have time to process it, for sure. And tonight is a really important night. And also, how many of you, of course, know that caucus is next week? Raise your hand. How many of you are planning on attending caucus? How many of you are planning on running for delegate? I better see every hand. Because if you're in this meeting, you need to be a delegate, okay? It's just what it is. So get your friends to go with you, have them nominate you, have them vote for you. Just make the plan and make it happen. All right, so we have caucus next Tuesday. If somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Starts at 7 p.m. I would suggest being there no later than 6:30 because number one, you got to get credentialed. Number two, you got to go find the location. Make sure you're patient. These are all volunteers that are running these caucuses. Next, we have county convention, which is, I don't have the date in front of me, is it April 17th? 18th? Okay, April 18th is the Davis County Convention. Yes, Brian? Okay, before county convention. Okay. And then the very next Saturday is state convention. So if you're a county delegate, you will go to the county convention. If you are a state delegate, you will go to the state convention. If it were me, I would rather be this year a county delegate. However, I am going to go for a state delegate because I need to pass a bylaw. And I have to be a state delegate to pass a bylaw. Does anyone have any questions regarding caucus and convention? Ben?
Does everybody know where their caucus location is at?
If anybody does not know that question, you can, let's talk about it after, because we need to get going on this, but we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. Make sure you don't leave. Scott? You can. That you can. And you know what? It's good to be precinct chair because then you have a vote on the county central committee as well. So don't hide from those positions. All right, so I want to thank all 4 of the sheriff candidates for coming out tonight. I really am thrilled to have all of them here so that we can ask them questions. And tonight we have the privilege of having Uriah Kennedy moderate this event. He does God and Country, which is a podcast, a local podcast, and you should all be watching his podcast. And I am gonna just turn the time over to him. And Ingrid.
So yeah, I'm Uriah Kennedy, and this is Ingrid Bettridge. We're with the God and Country podcast. We got QR codes up here at the front. If you guys want to grab those, you can just scan it. You can lead you right to our podcast. We've been doing this for quite a while. Many of you may know us from back at the convention that was down in Orem. We were at a booth at the convention. We've had John Taylor's been on just a couple weeks ago, and then Carrie Ann Lisenby's on, Trevor Lee's been on. We've had Heidi Baldery, Terry Auxier, so there's Dan McKay, there's been a lot of them that have been on. Burgess Owens has been on, plus a lot of others that we've talked about. We got a massive podcast coming up on Friday or tomorrow. So we're going to be down at the State Capitol building there's a museum area, and there's a presentation room within the museum room up there. And in there, we're going to have a town hall podcast. All 4 major news networks have been invited, so they'll probably be there. But we're going to have, again, Carrie Ann Lisenby on there, Trevor Lee. We're going to have Heidi Baldry, Dan McKay, and then Corinne Johnson from Utah Parents United. And then we're also going to have 3 different sets of parents of children who have committed suicide. And the podcast is going to be on suicide, DEI, and CRT in our schools and what's going wrong. So it's going to be broadcast everywhere. It's going to be probably our biggest podcast yet. So look forward to that. It'll come out next week. But we are inviting the public. So if you want to attend and be at the State Capitol building, you can kind of stand behind the cameras and watch things happen and ask questions afterwards. So again, State Capitol tomorrow at 11 a.m. We're going to be in the museum room. There's a presentation room. Today we're going to be moderating this thing. So not only are you going to see us all over YouTube, you'll see us here. So we'll have our contestants come on up and take a seat.
All right, I forgot to say exactly what's going to happen, but all of you come on up and take your seat. Whoever gets here first gets wherever you want to sit first. Everybody's going to have a mic, and you need to press the button on the bottom of the mic to be heard. So you can just press it once, you don't have to press it again. You will have an opening statement of 2 minutes and a closing statement of 3 minutes. And I'm gonna be the timer, and I was going back and forth over 1-minute answers or 2-minute answers. Which do you all prefer? 2? Okay, I thought 2 gives you, yeah, I agree. Okay, so
All right, we're going to go ahead and get this thing started. So yeah, the reason for the cameras and the mics, they're going to have 2 different mics. The one sitting in front of the one in their hand. The one in their hands is going to be so you guys can hear what they're going on, but the one in front of them is going on YouTube. So this is going to be on YouTube tomorrow. We were going to try to go live, but I didn't have enough time to set that up. We couldn't get the Wi-Fi figured out. So we're going to put this out tomorrow, and Davis County Conservatives is going to be streaming live right now. So we got about 20,000 subscribers. Our videos are getting between 30,000 and 50,000 views. So you guys are going to get a lot of notoriety from this. So just so you know, it goes out to a wide span. So we're going to get started here.
These questions came from county officers currently. I did not write these questions, so just so you know.
Okay, we're going to start with the opening statements, 2 minutes long, and then we'll get to questions. We're just going to go from right to left, or from left to right, I mean, the same way we read. So if you want to go ahead and start there at the very end. And pull that mic close to this one. Yeah, hit the button on the bottom and turn it on. Switch me and I'll figure that one out. How's that?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you to all those that organized tonight's meeting and for the church for hosting tonight's meeting. My name is Aaron Perry. I'm a lifelong Davis County resident. I was raised in Centerville, graduated from Viewmont High School, and my wife and I have called home at Layton City here in Layton home for 26 years where we've raised our 4 children. I started my law enforcement career with the Davis County Sheriff's Office in 1999. It's actually where my wife and I met, and it's where I served for 16 years before I went to the Roy City Police Department as the Assistant Chief, and then later the Weber County Sheriff's Office as the Chief Deputy. Serving as the Chief Deputy, I understand the complexities of running a Sheriff's Office, and during COVID, I actually ran the Corrections Division of the Sheriff's Office, and as a team, we received an award by the Utah Sheriff's Association for the work that was done during the pandemic. As Sheriff, my focus will be based on 3 pillars: fiscal conservative principles, professional excellence in employee development, and constitutional integrity. I'm running for Sheriff because I have the experience to lead, I have the local roots to care, and I have the conservative values to ensure that Davis County remains the safest place to live and work.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks to the Davis County Conservatives Group for hosting this. We appreciate this. My name is Zach Van Emmerik. I have almost been a lifelong resident. I've spent some time out of Davis County. After high school, went to the United States Marine Corps, where I served in the infantry. I grew up in the ranks to sergeant, where I became a squad leader. I was stationed in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, so that was part of my time outside of Davis County. When I came back, I decided to go into law enforcement. I started out of the Utah State Prison back in 2007. After that, I got recruited to go to Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, where I worked patrol. I worked various areas of patrol throughout the county. I went on to the Metro Gang Unit. I was on SWAT. As I promoted through the ranks, I became a team leader on the SWAT team, as well as a sergeant on the gang unit. Now, the gang unit is a regional task force. And what that means is it's made up of multiple agencies that come together and work on common goals. I like that model, and that's some model I will try to bring to Davis County. I know it's here, but I'd like to see that model grow. That being said, I promoted a lieutenant in 2020, where I was over the Magna precinct, where I ran a precinct of 45 officers and interacted with the city council on a regular basis. In 2023, the legislature came in and made Unified Police Department and Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office split. At that point, Sheriff Rivera hired me to be the deputy chief over the Law Enforcement Bureau. I helped stand that bureau back up from the ground up, from a non-existent state to the state that it's in now, where I have 95 personnel, and 70 of which are sworn. And then I'm also over the Professional Standards Division, which incorporates training, internal affairs, and our range. That encompasses the entire Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office of about 1,200 people. So that's who I manage. That's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. So I have gained a wealth of knowledge and of experience, not only creating an own standalone bureau, but leading and developing training, peer support, and internal affairs policies for the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. If I were to be the Davis County Sheriff, I will focus my attention and my experience on those goals and continue taking the direction it's going and keep Davis County the small town that it is. Thank you.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here and thanks for listening. Glad to see where the time hack is, so thank you. I'll listen for that. As I started this process, it's been quite eye-opening seeing that a lot of law enforcement agencies throughout the state of Utah are facing some of the challenges that we are within the department. And some of those challenges that I've been able to perceive is lack of change and lack of flexibility and fluidity for a changing world. I've spent the majority of my life here in Davis County. I've lived in 4 or 5 different cities, lived outside of the state, lived outside the country, been to almost all 50 states and over a dozen countries. One thing I could promise you, if you have not been out, the more you leave, the more you will love and appreciate what we have here. And that is what I am striving to protect and preserve. Go to a different country, and it's really eye-opening, the privileges and the freedoms that we have. I've had concerns the past few years that some of those are slipping within our community, within our state, and within our country. And I feel like we need to get back to some of those roots and have people get involved. I have 1 and 2 candidates up here today that is going convention only because I believe strongly in the convention system. And I want you to test me for everybody that lives in your neighborhood and your precincts. I want those questions. I've had a privilege to serve at the city, county, state, and federal level. For the past 4 years now, I've been a part-time firefighter paramedic at a North Davis Fire Department. Worked at the Sheriff's Office. I've worked at the Utah National Guard, where I'm currently an intelligence officer. I started my career at the military almost 15 years ago, where I started on the Army side as a military police, went to the Air Force side, military police, had a couple deployments in there. Last year I volunteered to go over to Europe to spend a couple months over in Poland to work some intelligence missions with NATO and with allied forces. And that was an amazing opportunity to be able to go and to learn and to have that breadth of knowledge and information. What I see is a lot of concerns coming down the pipe in the future. As an intelligence officer, that's my job, is to analyze, review, and to provide evidence-based. And that's where I'm focused on. And it sounds like my alarm went off, but my focus is that we're protecting our kids, the next generation. We're being hard on real crime. We're not just focused on traffic stuff. We're hard crime, protecting those constitutional rights, getting ready for cyber, AI, and be innovative. And then last but not least, working with all elected officials here within our communities so we can be synergistic and that we aren't just islanding ourselves and trying to make our own decisions. Thank you. Jon Atkin.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andy Oblad. You think this is okay over here? You think I can pick it up for your stuff? Thanks for being here tonight. I'm excited to see all your faces here. It's wonderful that everybody, y'all care this much to be here on a night like this. And thanks for putting this together. My family, my wife and I and our children, we live in Farmington, Utah, and happy to be in Davis County. I've been in law enforcement since 1996. That's about 30 years, and I could spend about 20 minutes talking about the experiences I've had and the background that I have. I'll give a little brief intro about that, but in 1996, I went to Salt Lake City Police. I worked up through the ranks to lieutenant there, had some amazing experiences, and after 21 years, I decided I would go work for the Utah Jazz, and I traveled around with them as their team security for a couple of seasons, and that was a lot of travel, and sounds glamorous, but it wasn't, and it was hard to be away from my family. And so in 2019, the sheriff, Kelly Sparks, appointed me to be a chief deputy over law enforcement in Davis County. In the last 7 years, I've been working hand in hand with Sheriff Sparks. And we've been able to make some positive change in the Davis County Sheriff's Office. I don't plan on making a bunch of sweeping changes at the Sheriff's Office if I'm elected. I hope to continue what we've been doing. I feel like the Sheriff's Office is in a really good place. And an example of that is just the different things we've been able to accomplish, the relationships we've been able to improve throughout the county with different law enforcement agencies, with the Controller's Office, with the Commission. And I'm excited to be here. I would invite you to look me up, go to the website, and ask me all the questions you want to, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Hopefully, it is working now. You can keep that one. All right, we're going to start going to the questions. We're going to start with, this was from the, I don't know.
We're not going to.
Maybe we should ask So we're not going to say who these are coming from. So one of the biggest things going on right now is obviously immigration. We're seeing what's going up in Minnesota. We're seeing how there are certain states out there that want to protect the illegals, and there's others that don't want to. Illegal aliens are causing a big rift in society, and ICE is in the middle of it. But in the middle of that is the sheriff's departments as well as the local police stations. So how are you going to support ICE? What is your opinions on immigration currently? And we're going to go the opposite direction this way.
How long is this one? 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay. We are currently working with ICE. We've been working with ICE and with our jail for years and years. People are committing crimes, they get arrested, they get taken to jail, and ICE will come and put a detainer on those folks, and they can deport them, they can move them around. That's been our involvement with ICE for years. We don't have anybody on an ICE task force. Moving forward, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have my deputies do that. I would continue to work with ICE the way that we are. I want to talk a little about immigration. Our party platform actually says that the Republican Party honors legal immigrants that come into this country because of what they bring, their entrepreneurial spirit, their hard work and dedication. My great-great-grandfather, Johann Frederick Oblad, came over from Sweden years ago, started his own blacksmith shop through hard work and perseverance. My sweet wife, Sandra, immigrated from Argentina legally and became a citizen of this country 28 years ago, and has worked hard to learn the English language, to master it. Now she's a medical interpreter up at the University of Utah, and it warms my heart that we have immigrants coming into the country legally, and that our country allows them to thrive. As far as illegal immigration, I think we need to secure our borders. I think we need to work with ICE where we can, as we already are. ICE is in a pretty difficult spot right now. I think they're working through it, trying to be professional and get through it maybe, but that's my stance on immigration.
All righty. Though we might be working with ICE at the Davis County Sheriff's Office, there are no official MOUs in place. You get on the DHS website, you can see who has official MOUs in place that have been signed and approved, and then some that are pending. There are 3 different types with that, but I would encourage you to go and do some research on that aspect of it. One of my concerns, if we don't have an MOU, if we don't have an official stance on that regard, is inadvertently becoming a sanctuary city or sanctuary place for people that maybe are here illegally and maybe are criminals. Those are my concerns. In my mind, I promise you, it doesn't just go to our neighbors to the south. As a military intelligence officer, I have great deals of concern with people here from Iran, people here from China, people here from North Korea that have come across that do not like us, that will steal from us, that will use any way they can to get what benefits them personally. Those are my concerns. And I think we need to have a clear set stance of, yeah, we have an MOU in place so people know where we stand. Also, so we can open up options to be able to have funds and other types of resources with our partners. Also going through on that side on the immigration, was that 2? Holy cow, that's fast. All right, pass.
All right, so going back to what I said earlier, I was part of the Metro Gang Unit for years in Salt Lake County. Not only did we work in Salt Lake County, we worked Davis, Utah County, Summit County, worked all over the state. That being said, I did work with ICE on a handful of different occasions. Anytime we ran into someone that we couldn't identify or we thought was maybe someone of another nationality, they, at that point in time, around 2013, 2014, had a much better identification system than we did for illegal immigrants and criminal immigrants. Seeing how that worked, was able to identify that equipment that we needed to bring into the rest of our agency for fingerprint identification stuff. So I was there at the forefront of that to help bring that into the Unified Police Department. Now, that being said, I'm a full supporter of ICE. We need to be helping them. If they need help on the streets and they're calling for help, we as law enforcement better be there to back our sisters and brothers. I stand by that wholeheartedly. If they're in trouble, I support federal law enforcement out in enforcing federal law. Now, as far as detention, that's where it becomes a little sticky. Kind of like John mentioned, MOUs and contracts, that's one thing. Immigrants who are here illegally are treated differently than criminal inmates, as you'd think of. So that being said, we need the federal government to give funding for training, housing, and a separate detention facility to hold these individuals that have not committed felonious crimes or criminal crimes that you think normal and they're just on an illegal immigration hold. They have different rights, and that's why we don't hold them on a large scale, and that's why the federal government builds detention facilities for them. I am all in support of having that type of facility in Davis County and cross-deputizing our deputies if the funding is there to support that. Thank you.
So I worked as a narcotics officer, and as a narcotics officer, we went after large drug trafficking organizations that were operating in Davis County. So we would build large cases, and then we would serve the warrants. We would go in and we'd serve the warrants. We'd arrest drug trafficking organizations that were coming directly from across the border and distributing large quantities of narcotics. And I know what it's like to personally risk my life to put somebody in jail, then to have them released before you have that agreement or that detainer with ICE, and then have them just disappear after you've literally risked your life to keep the community safe. So my focus as sheriff will be to focus on that partnership with ICE in deporting those that are here under criminal violation and in our jails on criminal charges, which there was actually a law passed added to the sheriff's responsibilities about 6 months ago that actually adds that as a requirement that every sheriff has to contact ICE before releasing anybody arrested on a felony or a DUI, which I would do for all criminal violations. I also think there's a place for helping ICE as well, and I think there's a place to explore the task force officer situation. It's working really well in Weber County because sometimes if you, as a young officer, I had an incident where I investigated a traffic accident, and sorry, it'll cut into my time. So I was investigating a traffic accident. We couldn't have that person identified, so we contacted ICE in order to be able to have that cooperation so we could continue our job. If you can't contact them, there's value in having that agreement and have officers assigned as a task force officer. And someone who personally responded as a chief deputy to the Salt Lake riots, as a chief deputy with 60 of my officers, I will not allow riots involving protests to ICE. I will not allow it. I will allow peaceful protests, but I will not allow riots, and I will defend those officers serving their duties to that extent that people protesting them start to commit criminal violations.
Excellent. Good responses, all of you. So a big part of being a sheriff is making sure that the deputies and everybody working underneath you have a high rapport with you. There's high morale. What would you do specifically to make sure we're raising morale within the sheriff's department? And number two is retention, making sure that the morale is high enough that you can retain those. We're going to start here, go this direction, loop back around to there.
Super excited. That's a great question, actually. So one of the aspects of my job currently over the Professional Standards Division with peer support is to focus on deputy mental health and wellness. We as a career really, for lack of a better term, suck at taking care of our deputies and our mental health. As a profession, we end our own lives more than bad guys kill us and more than we die in traffic accidents. So this is a huge priority of mine. Right now, I am currently seeking funding for a LCSW position to create a resilience program in the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. This would be my goal, if there is not one currently at the Davis County Sheriff's Office, is to build out that resiliency program. There's money out there, there's federal money, there's funding to build this out and to take care of our mental health needs of our deputies and officers. You cannot last a full career seeing what we see and going what we go through without some sort of help. Now, retention. I want to bring a culture that I've learned, and that is family. Family first. Treat your deputies like they are family, and you treat their family like they are part of one family. They will take care of you, and they will not want to leave you. I had a quote once, I think Richard Branson said it. Give your employees all the tools that they can to leave you, but treat them so well that they don't. That has been my leadership characteristic that I like to bring everywhere I go. And that's what I'll bring to the Davis County Sheriff's Office. I want to just build that culture of family so that they feel a connection with everyone involved in the agency and they do not want to leave, even if it's for more money. I don't want money to be an issue. I want them to be coming to the Davis County Sheriff's Office for the culture. Thank you.
Great question. Love it. So the past 2.5 years, over the past 2.5 years or so, we lost 2 patrol sergeants and we lost a lieutenant. And that was not through retirement. That was losing them to other agencies to almost essentially start over. I think that says a lot about an agency. If you know law enforcement agencies, typically when you start moving up through the ranks and you start making progress within your administration, typically you stay, typically you see a future, typically you have enjoyment. And there's something to say when you speak to some of the line level workers and they have stress coming into work because of what they deal with on the day-to-day basis from the administration or the organization and not from the job itself. That is reprehensible and excusable, and I think that we need to do a good look at that. I believe strongly in the state of Utah specifically that one of the big problems that we're facing within law enforcement is not pay. Pay is always a benefit, but it's either you have to be very well paid, the highest paid, or you have to have great culture and a great organization that looks after their people. If you don't have both, you're in a really bad situation and you're going to have a lot of issues. And I firmly believe if we look after our people, if we don't have that separation, that disconnect, that we'll be able to make good changes. If you have a farmer, a third-generation farmer, and then a CEO of, say, John Deere, who's going to be the most innovative person? I would argue that farmer, that person that's on the line doing their job every single day. They know what they need for the most part. You just need to listen to them. I think the sheriff's office, one thing I would love to be able to implement is a deputy/civilian board that reports directly to the sheriff to be able to make sure that we're not missing things in the mix. If we show people that we care, again, and same thing, law enforcement and the military, we show people we care and we're looking after them, they will want to stay, they will want to work harder. They'll have that internal buy-in because they have the respect for their administration and for their leadership. Within the military community, one thing I love is every single time around Christmas, Thanksgiving, those type of years, all of my leadership since I've been in is, do we have people that have a place to go? Do they have money for presents? And do they have food on the table? Unfortunately, that is not something I've experienced within my line of work. And I think that we need to do better, and we should do better. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We've done some creative things to try and improve morale and take care of our deputies and our civilians. One thing we did when I arrived in 2019, we didn't have a peer support program at all. And I was a peer support team lead when I was at Salt Lake City. And so we implemented a peer support team in Davis County. We have a strong peer support team. What that is deputies and civilians in each area of the office that are trained to help out where they can when anybody needs a hand. And if someone comes and talks to them, what they share is confidential. And that's one thing that we've done. Another thing we've done is we got a new software program that helps us track. It's called an early warning system. And we're able to find grant funding. I was able to find grant funding to implement that about 2 years ago. Lastly, one thing we did is we started Jon Chittister as our licensed clinical social worker. He actually has an office right across from this John. And he's amazing. He's there 3 times a week. And our deputies, our civilians, their families can meet with John. And he's busy. A lot of our folks are meeting with him. It's really good. I remember at least once, maybe twice, John, when you were on military deployment or on the holidays, and your patrol crew came and brought your family stuff. So it does happen in law enforcement. It does happen in our agency. And I think having a relationship with our employees is paramount. And a relationship where it's a first name basis, where employees feel like they can come in and talk to the sheriff or talk to the chief or talk to anybody in their chain of command. And I think we have a good thing going at the sheriff's office right now, but I would like to improve that. I've been supervising the jail for the last year, a little more than a year, spending time in the jail. And that's one of the complaints that I've heard about the sheriff's office is we don't see the administration back in the jail like maybe we should. And so that's something that I'm planning to improve. Thank you.
When I was a young deputy, I was working, it was about my 5th Christmas Eve, and it was my 5th Christmas Eve working in a row. And we had young kids. My wife kept calling me and saying, hey, can you stop by and say goodbye to the kids, good night to the kids before I put them to bed. 3 times I tried to pull into the driveway to visit them, and every time I got a call. So on the last call, as I was talking to her and I knew that she was putting them to bed, I was driving to the call, and I was in a poor headspace. I was feeling like I wasn't seen, I wasn't valued. And after I get done with this call, I had a family approach me. They sang me a Christmas carol. They thanked me for sacrificing my time to be out serving, and they left. To this day, I don't know who that family is, but it had a tremendous impact on me and the value of being seen, because in that moment I felt seen. So as a sheriff, I will create a culture inside the sheriff's office that every employee is valued and they feel seen. You have to focus on pay. Employees will work, they'll work hard for pay. They'll work harder for supervisors that believe in them. So we have to focus on supervision training, training good supervisors and building good supervisors from within the office. And then they work the hardest when they buy into the vision. So you have to include all employees in creating the vision, creating goals, measuring those outcomes, and then rewarding that performance.
John, as a follow-up question, we'll start with you pertaining to the points you were just talking about. Do you believe the sheriff's office is currently overstaffed, understaffed, or appropriately staffed?
Thank you. We are definitely understaffed. I don't think we've been fully staffed since I've been employed there. One thing, though, I think that should be done that I'm not aware of has been done is I believe that we should have an audit for our structure to see if it makes sense with we have our leadership where they're at. Back when we had the paramedic program, which accounted for about 60% of our patrol calls, our leadership structure for the patrol division specifically really hasn't changed since that has gone away. So I do think that we need to be able to reevaluate, and I would think that need to be done independently through other organizations. I would advocate for 2 separate organizations independently of themselves to be able to go through an audit whether we are at the appropriate level and where we should shift, because from what I have seen numerous lieutenants within the organization where some are worked to death and some come in skipping and they skip out to the parking lot 5 or 10 minutes before the end of the shift, and it doesn't seem like they are underneath nearly as much stress or workload as some of the other ones. So I think reconsideration, reallocation for that should be done. Yeah, I don't think I need to take the whole 2 minutes. Thank you.
Does it come to me next? We did transition away from the paramedic program, and that's been a huge success. And the paramedics are working with the fire departments, and I think it's providing a great service there. There actually was in patrol We've moved some lieutenants around. We've changed sergeants. There has been a restructuring. And we've done several audits in the sheriff's office. We did an audit on our firearms unit. We did an audit on our PT unit, that's physical training. We did an audit on our office staff and our employees, and that's the one we just finished recently. And I would agree with John. It's good to do audits every so often and make sure that you're following best practices and that the pieces are fitting the way they need to fit and that the relationships are there. I feel like the sheriff's office is understaffed. We've been asked to cut our budget the last several years. I think we've done a good job at managing that cut budget and not going over budget, working and spending within our means. But there's a cost to not having our agency fully staffed, and it's overtime. We're spending on overtime, and we're spending our employees that are there, that are working in a facility that's understaffed, are doing the job of 2 deputies. And we're doing everything we can. We've got a good recruiting class going, and we're hiring, and we're retaining better than we have been in the past. We're recruiting well. And so I have a lot of hope on the horizon that we'll be able to, with the new hires that we've just hired, we'll be sitting in a better place where we're not spending as much on overtime, and we're getting our people trained and able to give our good employees a break instead of asking them to work overtime. That is a struggle, and it's not just a struggle at the Davis County Sheriff's Office. It's a struggle in law enforcement in general, trying to keep your office fully staffed. So it's a struggle, but I feel like we're taking good strides in making things better. Thank you.
One of the things that I want to address was Andy actually talked about cuts, budget cuts. To me, budget cuts have always been, they're reactive. They're reactive when you're over budget and it's kind of emergency, you have to find these cuts. One of the things that I would focus on is continual improvement from cost savings and really building a culture where everyone's looking for that continual cost savings and we're constantly reevaluating so we don't get in those situations where we have to make some of those emergency cuts. I do think that my experience, 6 years at Weber County, will provide the ability in that evaluation to understand, are we understaffed, are we overstaffed? But not being there currently, I can't really speak to the current state of staffing.
To Aaron's point, actually, I'm an outsider as well, as I've explained earlier. One of the things I wanted to do as day one and as sheriff, and obviously this would take longer than the first day, but would be to talk to every individual, sworn and civilian in the sheriff's office, identify what they do, what their gripes and complaints are, what their concerns are. In doing that, I believe I could help identify, along with an audit, I do like the idea of an audit, what the needs are of the community we're serving. We can look at call volume, we can look at call statistics, and then look at the national level to see where we lie in those call volumes and deputies per civilian. When we talk about that in parts of thousands or tens of thousands, I know we in Utah generally run lower than the national average anyway. I think I would take that information along with the statistics to the county commission to provide them the information they need to understand that yes, cuts need to be made in the county, but sometimes you just cannot cut public safety. Everyone's got to understand public safety is the biggest budget in any rural city, county, or jurisdiction aside from the school district, right? That being said, yes, cuts need to happen. We do need to be fiscally responsible. We do need to train our employees to be fiscally responsible as well. But it cannot come to the backs of our deputies and the safety of our citizens. We have to be able to fund law enforcement. Whether you're in the deficit, you're in the red, as a commission, as a city, it doesn't matter. Police still have to be there to respond to calls. If they aren't, chaos ensues. So that would be my goal as the sheriff, is to protect the budget of the sheriff's office in a fiscally responsible way that also keeps the public safe.
Thank you. Building on some of your points, and we'll start with you, how should the sheriff's office be held accountable for budget overruns?
So I think the the first step in that is doing those audits and doing those evaluations. You have to make those adjustments, and you have to, back to what I said earlier, you have to be able to make those continuous improvements. One of the changes that I did when we were at Weber County is that I was running the jail, I was put over the jail. We had a contract with the state to hold state inmates, and we held a few federal inmates. Well, the state wasn't great at their reimbursement rate. It was a low reimbursement rate, and they were inconsistent at what they paid. So we reduced the number of inmates that we held with the state, and we increased our contract with the U.S. Marshals, which those inmates they're all local inmates that were just charged by our local cross-deputized prosecutors that are cross-deputized as federal prosecutors. So they would have been in our jail anyway. They just chose to take those cases federal, and we were able to actually bring $1 million a year back into the budget by that. So you've got to create a culture where we're not just asking for more money, but we're working together to find those cost savings so that we can thrive as a county.
Yeah, and to build on that, to what Aaron said, to take that a little further, there's plenty of federal grant money out there and state grant money that we can apply for all sorts of different things we can do, equipment, training. There's numerous avenues we can find other ways to identify incoming money, as well as federal. I do like the federal inmate part. I recently, where I am, they identified that the U.S. Marshals were underpaying them. So we renegotiated that contract, which did save us, or brought in an average about $1.2 million a year, just from renegotiating the contract. Now I want to get back to the actual question though. How do we prevent overspending? I'd imagine in Davis County there is a fiscal unit, and a fiscal unit more than likely probably assigned to the sheriff's office. I work very close with my fiscal unit as a chief in Salt Lake. I would bring that to Davis County and work very close with our fiscal unit to ensure that we are spending our money not only correctly, but in a fiscally wise way. Fiscal divisions are in organizations for a reason. They're there to keep us in check, and they're there to help us understand our budgets and what we can and can't do with them. So I would rely heavily on them to ensure that we're not overspending and we're able to use our money responsibly. But again, I'll go back to, that still does not cross public safety. At the end of the day, if there's a mass event here, money will be spent, and it has to be spent.
All right, so what do we do if we spend too much? I think the following year, then that money should be recouped back to the county. If we overspend, if we go beyond what the citizens have selected their elected officials to hold us accountable to, we should be held accountable to that. And if we go over, cut it out the following year. As sheriff, you should be able to advocate for what we need and project what we need in the future. We do have someone that works full-time. Her name is Andy Cook, and she's great, very smart. She's used to managing a couple $100 million budget before she came to the sheriff's office. And so that is her primary job. I'll branch out a little bit further, though. So going through this process of running for sheriff and to have your vote and your support as sheriff of Davis County, I've gone to all 15 city council meetings, sat down with every single law enforcement chief in Davis County. And some of the conversations we've had are the numerous duplicated efforts that we find throughout the county. Most PDs want to do their own thing, whether it's drone program, whether it's K-9s. Now, is that fiscally responsible for everyone involved? I would argue probably not. And so that is a step that I think that we can do to be more fiscally responsible and accountable to the people. Additionally, when we have bigger units like this, we have more training, we have more funds, we have more resources. And so I would advocate heavily to be able to work with these other law enforcement agencies in Davis County as the strategic planner, the strategic arm of the county with those smaller cities. That's how the military works. You have the big organization up top, and they work with the smaller down, and they have that vision and that view, that mountainside view of where we're going and what direction we're taking this. And that's what we need to have at the county level. We need to be able to have that good relationships. So when I do something silly or dumb, which I'm sure everybody will, and I would at some point, that I get that phone call and we have those conversations. And I firmly believe that is a good path forward, to be able to be accountable to you, to have a vision, and as well as do right by our law enforcement by providing them the means, the resources, and the support that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. I think these gentlemen have done a good job answering that question. I will say that I've been there for the last 7 years, working hand in hand with the sheriff, and we have never overspent. We've always turned back money to the county. And so we are accountable to ourselves. We hold ourselves accountable. And we don't spend money that isn't ours. To answer the question, I would agree that if we did spend money that was over our allotted budget, then we would have to go without something that we need, whatever that is. And as Zach stated, you don't want to cut public safety, but Aaron made a comment that is interesting. We were not asked to cut our budgets because of anything we did wrong. We ran our organization, we managed it, we spent the money on the things that we needed to, and we turned money back. The county came and said, you need to cut your budget, and not just the sheriff's office, but every office across the county had to make budget cuts this year. And that had to do with the tax increase and how much they did the tax increase and the budget shortfalls that they had as the county, but that was not the sheriff's office. We've been very responsible with our budget, and we will continue to do that. I think it's paramount. I also think that if you're going to elect somebody to be the sheriff, you should elect somebody that actually has budgeting experience at the high level. I've been supervising all 3 bureaus. That's corrections, that's administration, and that's law enforcement. I've been managing their budgets for 7 years and making sure that our budgets are where they need to be. And if we can save money, we save money. And we're fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Well, it was interesting you said the comments that you said, because that's where we're going with our next question. So we've got Highway Patrol that manages the state, sheriffs that manage the county, and then we got our police officers. So how do you create a atmosphere of we're all on the same team? We're going to start here with you and just go right back.
It's a great question. And I think a lot of people don't really understand how that relationship works or who does what. But you've got state troopers and highway patrolmen that work for the state, generally. You've got deputies that work for the county, and then municipal police officers that work for the cities. We have 15 cities in Davis County, and the deputies and the police officers and the troopers work together really well. It isn't our place to manage their budget, though. Each city has their own budget. We work together, but some of the cities, we have three cities that are contract cities, actually contract with Davis County Sheriff's Office to provide their law enforcement services. And so we're always meeting. We meet all the time. We have negotiated contracts. We're finding out what they need, how it needs to go. And then we work hand in hand with the other cities, but they've got their own police departments. And so it isn't my place to tell another city how to spend their budget. It is my place as a county to be a resource to them when they need it. And that's what we try to do. We try to, if it's our Bearcat that's for our SWAT operations, or if it's, we just got we were able to put in for a federal grant that got us a SHRP, which is an amphibious vehicle for our search and rescue. That's if we go up in the snow or if we go out onto the reservoir. If there's an issue that comes up, emergency management or law enforcement or otherwise, where they need the county's equipment in the cities, we'll be there, Johnny, on the spot to help them. That's how we work together. And I feel like the communication is going well. We meet monthly, the chiefs, all of the chiefs in the county with the different city police departments, and then the sheriff and the deputy chiefs for the sheriff's office. And ICE is there, and Highway Patrol is there. A whole bunch of, all of the law enforcement administrators come to that meeting, and we meet more often if we need to, more than monthly, but we have a great relationship with them. Things are going really well, and I would say our reputation around the county, the sheriff's office, has improved significantly and is where it needs to be.
Question, thank you. Try not to hit too much of the same points, but I probably will, so apologize. Andy hit on the fact that I have no interest in overstepping. However, I think that there are a lot of things that we're on the same page with and we can work closer together. As I've gone and sat down individually with these chiefs, some of these thoughts that I've had mentioned before have come up. What can we do to work together better? What can we do to save money? Because everybody's feeling the pinch. As I've gone around, I met with all the mayors, met with all the city council members. There's been a significant amount, which probably has happened as well within your independent cities, where a lot of these elected officials have not won their re-election for many reasons because of tax increases. And so tax increases hopefully are not coming because of the sheriff's office or because of the county at large. But I would argue now there have been a few of those, one of which, yes, we got away from the paramedic program. right or wrong, what came down to is we were doing the service for how much, for 10 cities plus Hill Air Force Base, for what one city pays for their own city. And so when we started talking about fiscal responsible, that question comes to my mind, is are we kicking things down the road where other people have to pay more money when we were doing a service for a better price? I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but I think that is something that we should always have in mind. As well as I've gone around, I sat down and met with numerous elected officials, especially in the north end with mayors. There was concerns that they were not aware of the sheriff's office was getting out of dispatch service, which is increasing their fees 300 to 400% for dispatch services. And that, of course, is a big concern to them because now they got to be able to reallocate funds. They got to go. The mayor and the city council have to go to their city and say, hey, we got to raise taxes. We need more money. And they are going to be held responsible to their citizens for a decision that they claim that they didn't have much of a choice in or aware of or foresight in that information. So I think that to play good, I would advocate, and I would definitely do it myself, where I would meet annually with our mayors and with our city council members to make sure there isn't anything festering, to make sure that we are on the same page, 100% meet with the law enforcement chiefs. But again, if I'm going to be your representative, I can't get to all 380,000 residents, but I can get to all of your mayors and city council members. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll go back to the early time in my career when I was on task force with the gang unit, and I started realizing that to be successful in law enforcement, you have to build a relationship with other agencies. If those relationships don't exist and you can't communicate, that's when we put ourselves in silos. When we put ourselves in silos and we individualize our own area, then things can become combative. Not necessarily combative, but on the streets, it's very territorial. Now, we don't want to have that happen. What we want to see happen is a great relationship, great working relationship between the agencies, and I would foster that as the sheriff. I am glad to hear that they meet monthly with the chiefs. That's something we do down south, and that is something I, as the school security chief over Salt Lake County, have voiced a lot of my concern, a lot of my problems and issues with the way that we're doing things, the way that it's dressed. And so having those relationships with those chiefs are what help us become a regional asset. With the Davis County Sheriff's Office, it's been a little mentioned too a little earlier. That's what I'd like to see the Sheriff's Office become, if it isn't already, or bigger than what it currently is. That regional asset for the county that any police department can call for anything, whether it be forensics, drone support. I think John mentioned that. Being that regional asset is good for a few reasons. It makes you the hub of the county. It kind of helps you run those relationships a little bit better. And also, every citizen in Davis County, whether they're in a city or unincorporated or a contract city, still pay county taxes. So at the end of the day, the Davis County Sheriff's Office is a county organization. It's not just to West Point, it's not just to unincorporated, it's not just to Fruit Heights or South Weber. They are law enforcement for the entire county. And that's where sharing those responsibilities come into effect, and it's for the Sheriff's Office to step up and be that regional asset for the county.
I think every panel member would agree with me that at the line level, there's not really those silos. When you have a bad call, when you have a dangerous call, everybody comes together and puts all those differences aside to get the job done. The problem comes at that administrative level, and that's where the focus needs to be, to avoid those silos and create cooperation. And back to the audit comment, you have to be able to have social capital with those other administrators that you can hold each other accountable. One of the things that we discovered when I was at Weber County is, due to an agreement from decades prior, we were covering a portion of Ogden City that was due to some expired agreement from 30 years, and it was a high call volume. So we were funding a response by our deputies to Ogden City with deputies that were being paid for by West Haven, and we were having the same thing with the Highway Patrol. Over time, and due to an old, outdated agreement way before my time, Highway Patrol wasn't responding to calls on a certain section of the state road. So we built a relationship with those agencies, had that conversation to make sure that the individuals receiving the services are the right, that they're paying. The ones that are getting the service are paying, and they're paying the appropriate amount. And we don't have those efficiencies or unnecessary duplication of service.
Excellent. So we're going to keep going with kind of a similar discussion here. So when your agency gets assigned an actual case, are you going to make the arrest, follow through, or do you wait for other agencies to come? Start with you and just move back around.
Yeah, absolutely. I look at the severity of the case, right? I think any case that happens in Davis County jurisdiction, Sheriff's Office jurisdiction, that's homicide, felonious rape, kidnapping, the big ones, we should hunt them down. We should go get those guys and we should put them in jail. I also look at, like I go back to earlier, the regional model. We should also be that organization that everybody in the county looks up to. If there's an agency that's too small, and they don't have a fugitive unit, we should be that unit they can come to when they have a fugitive or a homicide suspect or a kidnapping, DV suspect, any kind of aggravated felonious suspect. We should have an organization, a small unit that can go out and identify and locate that person. I have that unit currently where I'm at. That is one of the most recognized units in our organization. They travel throughout the state and all around the county to help every agency on their major crimes. That's where we're identified as a regional resource, and that's what I'd like to see the Davis County Sheriff's Office become. That regional resource that every agency looks up to when really bad, scary things happen that some police departments don't want to go do real police work with. And I hate to say that lightly, but it's true. I know it happens where I'm at. I guarantee it happens here. Some police departments will not go after their major crimes because of liability or fear, whatever the case may be. We should be those at the last line of defense where there's a real bad guy on the streets that needs to be taken off. They can rely on calling the sheriff's office to grab their team and go out and grab that person off the streets and take care of them.
Forgive me, Uriah. Can you read that question one more time so I make sure I address it properly?
I understand it completely. I completely get it. You guys can do that at any time, by the way. So when you are specifically assigned a case, are you going to be the one that pursues it, makes the arrest, or do you wait for other agencies to get involved?
If it's in Davis County, yes, we will, as long as we have the resources necessary to be able to achieve it safely. Now, and I say that because it's not uncommon. So I, as well, like Zach, was on the SWAT team as assistant team leader before I got off just this past year. Generally, the common practice is if we have a case that maybe is in Salt Lake or within Unified's area, we'll call them and say, this is what we have, and it's their area, so we will let them decide whether they want to skin it or if they're okay with us doing it. And again, that goes back to making sure that we keep good partners, we have those good relationships, we don't want to overstep it, but we are definitely going to get the person that we're after. Same thing with any other city. If it is our case, the common understanding with the law enforcement is, yeah, it's your case. Okay, what do you need to support? That's 9 times out of 10, probably close to 10 times out of 10 how that response is. And again, facilitating those good relationships, making sure that we have the resources to do it safely, notifying the appropriate people, notifying the mayors in those cities so they know, and so when they start getting calls from the news on why we're doing a big event or something in their city, that they actually know, and so we don't throw them under the bus and keep them out of the loop. I think all these things are good relationships that we can and should do and do better and focus on. Thank you.
The question that you bring up, I think you're focusing on the agency, not the sheriff, right?
Your sheriff's agency, yeah,
Sheriff's
you
agency,
guys.
okay. And I would agree with what the other gentlemen have said. I think they said it well. There's something that we do. We take pride in handling our stuff, but if it gets to a point where all of your deputies are tied up on something and a hot call comes in where you need help, the other officers are going to come from wherever they can to help, and we do the same. It's like a mutual aid agreement, and our deputies and the other officers spend all day doing this. Running around, helping each other, backing each other, assisting. Something else that we do is we're involved in teams, countywide teams. We call them a task force. It could be for our SWAT team. It could be for our Metro Narcotics team, where each agency that can will offer up an officer or two or a sergeant or a deputy, even to the crime lab that we have with the FBI. And Davis County is participating in all of those, and all 4 of those task forces, and leading in that area. It's a good partnership that we have, and that's the other way that we do it. We work together to handle stuff. We handle stuff that's ours, and if it's a serious matter or if it's not a serious matter, we're going to handle it like Jon said, to our ability to do it safely. And if for some reason we can't, then we'll ask for help. But usually we don't have to ask for help because our officers are listening on the radio and they're going, and they're helping. Thank you.
I agree with what the others have said. As sheriff, I will make sure that deputies receive training and they feel confident in their abilities and the resources that they have to make those arrests inside of our jurisdiction. One of the things that I want to mention is that I know the question was more about the agency than the office, but I think there are times when the sheriff's primary responsibility is basically a CEO of a multi-million-dollar agency, but there are times when the sheriff and the chiefs need to stand out front and kind of lead the charge. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but back in 2020, when I was at Weber County, we did that at Ogden and Salt Lake. We responded to Ogden to the protest. They thought we were going to turn into a riot there to help Ogden. They had just had an officer killed in the line of duty, and they were worried those protests were going to turn violent. And the chief came out and said, we're not going to allow them to touch this memorial with his vehicle that we've established. So we were there in force to make sure that that didn't happen. And that's a time and place where your top leadership, I think, leads from the front out there. Those are rare, but those are cases when you do get out there, out in front, and lead from the front.
Let's move over to accountability to voters. There's a question asked here, how should voters evaluate an incumbent sheriff's performance? So we'll start with you.
One more time.
How should voters evaluate an incumbent sheriff's performance?
I think voters should look at what the sheriff has been able to do over the last 7 years. This is Kelly Sparks' 8th year, and he's retiring. And look at the agency where it is now, and look at the agency where it was in 2019 when he took over. One thing he did was he brought in expertise from the outside. I spent my career 21 years in Salt Lake City. That's the busiest city in the state. There's a lot going on there, and that's where I learned how to become a leader. When I applied for the job here, he plugged me in appointed me to be the law enforcement chief, and then he had a chief over corrections and a chief over administration. And I think it's great to ask what are the problems, what's going on, what would we do better? And I think everybody can, if you're honest, can find ways that you can improve in your personal life and in your career and in your agency. And I'm not going to say that everything's peachy and there aren't things we can improve. But if the voters look at the improvements that have been made and where the office sits right now, to me, that would be the telltale sign. Kelly Sparks is retiring, and he's asked me to run, and he's endorsing me to run for sheriff because he believes I'm the right candidate to continue moving our office forward. And that's why I don't have a bunch of big changes that I want to make. I do have some personal things that I would like to change and do, and I'm concerned about safety in the community and in the schools. We've done a really good job of working with the school district to provide school guardians and get them trained. We have a school security chief like what Zach does. We have a chief in here, Jeff Kendrick, and he's a lieutenant and doing awesome. And I think really setting the standard for the whole state. I can't see that. Are we done? I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Great one. So how am I going to be accountable as the interim sheriff if I am blessed enough to be able to get this election? How am I accountable is multifaceted with how I view this. So Andy mentioned his endorsement from the sheriff. I have over 20 endorsements from your mayors, from your city council members, from your state legislators here in Davis County, because I am making those relationships so not only you can hold me accountable, but they can hold me accountable. So it's not just one point of failure, it's a couple. And that is where it should be. I should feel the pressure from your individual mayors if they aren't happy with the service that's being provided at the sheriff's office. So I can have those phone calls and I can have those relationships. And so they can represent you in who they share their support to. As well, within the sheriff's office itself and be able to be accountable, I strongly believe that we should have public information on what our strategic plan is. Do we have a 1 year, do we have a 3 year, do we have a 5-year plan on where we're driving law enforcement and the county at large? That the sheriff's office and the commissioners and the mayors and the police chiefs are on a very similar page. And I think that's where we should be able to drive those efforts, because that is going to avoid duplicated efforts. That's going to avoid duplicated spending. That's going to avoid going outside the box that we're trying to stay in or off the rail. And I think that's really what we need. And what I would be a heavy advocate of is an annual review where I say, okay, here's our 3 year, here's our 1 year, and here's our 5-year plan. And at the end of every year, it is my responsibility to tell the public where I made it or I missed the mark. And I think that is what we're missing. We need to be able to have that visual representation so everybody knows what the expectation for me is. And that way I am more accountable to myself and to you, because I have told you what my plan is. It's always nervous or worrisome. I'm sure these gentlemen have faced it too. Before we threw our hat in the ring, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going for this, but if I don't make it, yeah, it might be a little embarrassing, but I'm not going to leave anything off the table. And I think that is a key, is we need to be able to put ourselves out there and be uncomfortable and say, this is what I'm going to do, so that way I hold myself to those standards. Thank you.
That's a great question. One of my favorite questions I get all the time. What is the difference between a sheriff and a police chief? The difference is they're bosses. A police chief is hired by a city manager or a mayor. Sheriff is hired by you. You are my boss as the sheriff. I agree with what they said. That's great. Have a strategic plan, all that. You know, look back on my 4 years or the incumbent's 4 years. That's how you identify some of the places that mistakes were made. I'll go out to the mayors and the councils and have those conversations, build those relationships. But at the end of the day, you're my boss. You are who I work for. So my number one goal is to keep you safe and keep you happy. So my goal as the sheriff is to take my deputies and turn them towards a community-oriented approach, right? We as law enforcement struggle in getting out of our patrol cars. We need to get out more. We need to get out and interact with the kids. We need to get out and interact with civilians and citizens. We need to get out of our fishbowl and our little 360 lens, our little comfort zone inside our cars, and get out and interact with the public. As the sheriff, that's what I plan to do. Interact with the public on a regular basis. Have a coffee with the sheriff or lunch with the sheriff monthly, where the public is invited to come give me your input, because your input might not get heard at a city council. Your input may not get heard at a county council. If I'm not there to hear that input, I want that input from you. You, the citizens, are my boss as the sheriff. I will listen to you and take your concerns and your complaints, see if I can rectify them. If I cannot, I'll explain to you, this can't be rectified, or this is an issue, or maybe it's a different perception that you need to look at, or I need to look at, so that we can come to a common resolution for whatever problems the citizens are having. You're my boss. You tell me how to do my job.
I agree with that last comment. Whichever one of us is elected, this isn't our office. This is your office. It's your office as citizens. The person that's elected is just a steward for a period of time, 4 years. The way that I will hold myself accountable to the citizens of Davis County is by publishing a monthly report that measures our performance, what we've done, what we've accomplished, including cost savings that we've found, total number of bookings, all of that information to show how we're performing, both day-to-day patrol operations. There are often overlooked divisions of the sheriff's office that often don't get mentioned, right? Civil process and these other processes that only the sheriff has a responsibility for. So all of those different processes, I will create a report that's sent out monthly to include where we're finding cost savings, where we're trying, where we're finding savings to measure our performance, and then make myself available to answer questions that come from those published reports.
Thank you. What distinguishes your leadership style from the other candidates?
Back to me. I probably won't speak to their leadership styles, but they will, so that's okay. My leadership style is, I would call it servant leadership. I like to get to know the people that are working for me. I like to get to know who they are and what their needs are. One of my favorite jobs as a police administrator was when I became a sergeant. And when you become a sergeant, you switch over from being an officer to a first-line supervisor, and you realize that your job is no longer contacting the public and dealing with the problems and serving the way you used to. Your job is taking care of the officers or the deputies that are doing that, getting them the training that they need, helping them get their time off, helping them through any issues that they have, helping mentor them and prepare them. One of my favorite things to do is mentor and teach and help officers and help them if they want to promote. Teach them how the process works. Encourage them to get a degree. Encourage them to be on a committee to do those sorts of things. I think that's paramount. And can you repeat the question one more time? Because I lost it.
What of your leadership styles would you distinguish yourself compared to your other?
And lastly, I would say that I've spent time to achieve the education. I went and got a bachelor's degree while I was working as a police officer, and then a master's degree from Arizona State in emergency management and homeland security. And I spent time working as an officer. I didn't promote to sergeant until I had 10 years on, and learned how to be a police officer. And then I spent another 8 years as a sergeant before I became a lieutenant. I have 18 years of leadership experience in 2 large metropolitan agencies, Salt Lake City and Davis County, for the last 7 years, serving as a chief. And I'm the most experienced leader in this race. That would be the biggest thing that distinguished me.
What distinguishes your leadership style from the other candidates?
Thank you. Appreciate it. You can have many years of experience, but it's not going to change unless you change. Dick Winters, if you guys have seen Band of Brothers, one of my favorite quotes from him is, "Never ask your men to do what you're not willing to do yourself." I have done almost any kind of grunt work you can talk about when we start speaking of law enforcement. Firearms instructor, DT instructor. I went to Salt Lake City SWAT school. I went to LA County SWAT school. Firefighter, paramedic, patrol officer, court security, criminal investigator, internal affairs background. Then we go down the military path, but I won't bore you with that. I think it's knowing what is required of your people and being able to have that empathy with them for what they have to deal with on a daily basis. It's about them. One of the things I love about within the NCO Corps, the first sergeants within the military, is the saying that mission first, people always. There's no way we can accomplish anything within this line of work unless we are putting our people first. We're investing in them. They feel comfortable to come speak with us. Again, I'm sorry I keep doing this, but as a military intelligence officer, but also throwing an internal affairs investigator, my job is to be unbiased. I need to be able to feel comfortable to speak truth to power, to go and sit in front of the general, the governor even, which we have, and say what our report is, what our classified rebriefing is, what our report is, no matter how much he doesn't like it. And we need to be able to have a good culture within leadership, within the organization, so anybody can come up and voice those thoughts, those opinions, and those concerns. And that is what we need to foster. We need to make sure our people feel comfortable to come in and vent, or to come in and say, hey, I think this is a good idea. Because again, going back to the basics, the person that's going to be have the most ingenuity and the most creativity is the person that's doing the job day in and day out. We need to be able to foster those relationships so they can come and tell us, hey, boss, I think this is a good idea and this is why. And that we need to be able to reinforce and encourage that. It's always easier to try to pull back a racehorse than push a draft horse. And I promise you, that is what we need to encourage and what we need to focus on. Thank you.
I'm going to take a little different route here from just my work experience and talk a little bit about my life experience. I think life experience plays a major role in your leadership journey and your experience. As a young child, I was raised by a single mother. She did an amazing job. Thank you, Mom. But I had a little brother, and he was a little quiet, and he was a little shy. When we walked home from school every day or walked to the babysitters, I had to make sure he got there safe. So my protector mentality started at a young age. I made sure he was okay. I may have gotten in a few fights over him because, kids picked on him, so I had to be big brother and help him out. That being said, you fast forward, I joined the Marine Corps, and that's a different kind of leadership, like Jon said. That's a top-down leadership, and that's a do as you're told and just keep your mouth shut. That is definitely where I learned to not be that kind of leader. Throughout that time, I learned what type of leader I wanted to be, and I had plenty of examples of what type of leader I didn't want to be. Fast forward into law enforcement, and I grew up through the ranks, through SWAT and all these other cool things that I got to do that were really exciting. But I always started out in an unofficial leadership role because I do like to build that family culture, make people feel like they belong, let them know that I hear them. I want them to be seen and felt. So I've also had personal struggles. I've been through divorce. I'm raising 2 kids on my own. Now, that's tough. I can understand where people come from when law enforcement has problems. I can be compassionate about their issues because I understand them. I didn't have a perfect life, but I love the life I live, and I'm glad I've come down this path because it's turned me into the person that I am. If you ask anyone that I work with, I'm generally one of the favorite leaders I've ever worked for. I don't come in and make them call me by my rank. I call them by their first name. I identify my people. If I see someone in my agency I don't know, I've never met before, I go up and I introduce myself. That's part of that family culture that I'll bring to the Davis County Sheriff's Office. I have life experience. I have life experience that's not like everyone else's, and that's where I'm going to take the Davis County Sheriff's Office, with family culture.
So my leadership style, I try to lead by seeing others. I try to lead by seeing the humanity of others and not seeing someone as an obstacle. I think everybody on this panel can relate to the end of a 12-hour shift. You're getting ready to go home. It's been a long shift, and that late call comes in 15 minutes early. It's so easy to turn the oncoming crew that's late into an obstacle. It's so easy to turn those individuals that you're going to just into the next call for service versus slowing down and seeing the humanity in them. I implemented this kind of culture at the Weber County Sheriff's Office in the jail, and one of the things we did, it's great when you buy into it, but when you start to see your employees buy into it, I had a sergeant that came to me, was in the jail, and she came to me and she said, I need to share a story with you. She said, we had a unit that was getting ready to riot. They wouldn't go back in their cells. We were getting the SOG team ready to go in to use force against these individuals to force them into their cells. And I decided to start using these principles that we learned about seeing other people. And I just engaged the leader of this kind of group in a conversation. Why are you here? Why are you doing this? And I learned about him. I learned why he was upset. I learned that the only person in his family that talks to him since he got arrested was his grandma. And we cut the phones off just as he had made contact with her for the first time in 3 months. So they made arrangements for that phone call, and then the individual looked at her and said, I will get everyone to lock up because you see us as people, not like animals, but I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for you. And that's the kind of leader that I am, and that's the culture I want to build at the Sheriff's Office.
This is going to be a little bit longer of a question, so this is coming from me, actually. So around the country, we're going to go off what you're talking about. Being that sheriff's offices are uniquely qualified because you're voted by the people and you don't have another boss. We saw it down at the southern border when we had this massive border crisis where Biden was not allowing people to arrest illegals. The police departments had to shut down, the highway patrol office had to shut down, but the sheriff's offices stood up because they're elected by the people and we're still enforcing the law. We've seen the same thing happen in California where there's cities that were trying to harp down on Second Amendment rights and trying to enforce new laws that were not justified and not gone through the courts yet, but yet we had sheriffs publicly stand up against that, saying, no, I'm going to uphold the Second Amendment. We've had similar things with sheriff's offices in Florida do the same thing with both illegals as well as the Second Amendment. You're in a unique position because you are elected that the people, your bosses are out here. As mayors change, as governors change, what will you specifically do to uphold the constitutional rights of the people and not leadership in the state or in the cities that are trying to overgo their boundaries a little bit? Let's start here and just work our way down.
Okay. So I'm a staunch supporter of the Constitution and individual constitutional rights. I actually had that written over my door when I was a chief at Weber County. I tried to instill that in the culture there of in every action that we do, we need to be considering individual constitutional rights. I will stand up for the Constitution. I need to be careful about what I share because what I did was the right thing, but I want to be respectful to other individuals that were impacted by this situation. When I was at Roy Police Department, there was a conflict above me. It was above my pay grade, and I was told by my police chief to stay out of it because he was old and getting ready to retire, and I was young and had my whole career in front of me. But it didn't feel. I knew on a personal level it wasn't right. I needed to make my voice known. And I did it at the real risk of my job. I spent the next 6 months wondering day to day if I had a job. Now, at the end of the day, somebody got terminated. And this isn't about the situation as a whole, and I want to be respectful to that situation. But I'm using this to illustrate to what extent I'm willing to put myself out there. I was willing to put myself out there in my job at jeopardy to stand up for what I believe in. I'm a staunch supporter in constitutional rights, and I will stand up for the individual constitutional rights of every citizen in Davis County.
I'm going to go back a little into my family history really quick, very briefly. My paternal grandfather and my maternal grandfather are both from Europe. They both came over from Denmark and Holland. And they both said, Zach, I came here because I want to be an American. I believe in the Constitution. And they raised me to have those same beliefs in our system and our Constitution. That's why at a young age, at 18, well, I had 17, I made my mom sign the contract for the Marine Corps for me. I signed a blank check to the Constitution. Worth up to and including my life. Once I got into law enforcement, I continued to have that open account to the Constitution. My heart and soul is in that piece of paper. To me, it is not just a piece of paper, it's our republic. It is our history. It is our right. I am a firm believer of the Constitution as the rule of law, and I will willingly give my life for that. And that's why sheriffs down in other states were willing to do the same. As part of the Utah Sheriff's Association, you get down there and you meet up with a lot of other deputy sheriffs and administration. We share a lot of those same goals. Same thing with the Western States Region Sheriff's Association. That is why we are there, so that we can protect our Constitution from cities and mayors that have a different kind of agenda that want to take this piece of paper and not respect it and try and do whatever they want to do through small ordinances and legislative intent. Until there are amendments made by our Congress and certain things followed, that paper has certain rules written on it, and we do not violate those rules. Our Constitution is something that's provided one of the greatest countries in the world and the history of our world. And we have been one of the most successful and open civilizations because of that piece of paper. I signed my check once, and I continue to sign it every day. As your sheriff, I will continue to sign that blank check, willing to lay down for that Constitution.
Thank you. When I think about this question that you kind of are posing about the Constitution as well, I like to visualize our constitutional republic is a good, solid framework, and we can do whatever we want within that framework, but that framework is where we're allowed to operate. And I think it's important for us to know what that framework is, and if we have people that don't know, it's our job and our responsibility to help educate them what that framework is. And I strongly believe, as the sheriff, I need to be able to understand that, and I need to be able to relay that information to those that maybe do not. I have no interest in doing anything that would be contrary to that Constitution. It's like Zach, same thing. This is where I spent the majority of my life supporting, defending, and serving the people. And when I think of government itself, the government doesn't exist for the people. The people exist, and that's why we have a government. And so our people is the reason why that government has a place. And it is us, it is not them, that controls how our country runs. And that Constitution is what provides us those protections against that government. Thank you.
I enjoyed your question. Has been mentioned, there we go, has been mentioned that the sheriff's office is different than other chiefs of police, and you talked a little bit about why. Recently, there was a law passed, not a law, but a ballot initiative where we were all allowed to vote on ensuring that that stays the way it is, that the sheriff is elected and not appointed or some other way to get into office. And I think, and overwhelmingly that passed because that's what people want. They want a sheriff that is elected and isn't a puppet for some city council or mayor or even a county commission. We have a county commission. They determine the purse strings of our operation, but they cannot tell the sheriff how to run his office or her. And I think the best way to look at this is, what's the sheriff going to do in a crisis situation? A crisis like the ones you were talking about. And the sheriff stood up and did a good job, came together. That's what I plan to do. And the only way I can explain that to you is to tell you what I've done in crisis situations throughout my career. And I've responded on numerous calls, active shooter calls, 3 different active shooter calls in Salt Lake City while I was there. The Triad Center, the LDS Family History Library. Later on in my career as a sergeant, I responded to the Trolley Square shooting. That was a crisis. And I went in and I was instrumental in ending that conflict, that problem. When crisis happens, you need a strong leader that will put themselves behind the citizens, that will put the citizens up front and address their concerns, address their safety. That's what I've done throughout my career. I've been upholding the Constitution of the state of Utah, upholding the Constitution of the United States. I will continue to do that if I'm elected.
As law enforcement always sees the worst of the worst on a daily basis. And a lot of times the officers themselves, it becomes very, very taxing, where they start treating everybody like criminals. You pull somebody over for speeding or for a minor traffic violation, and it's a mean demeanor. You treat the people mean, and it's understandable because they see the worst of the worst on a daily basis. How would you help the officers treat everybody with respect like human beings, like they're innocent, but yet still at the same time be worried, because we also don't know when someone pulls a gun, your life's at risk. So there's got to be a medium there where people are treated decently with respect like a human being, but yet at the same time the officer has to be cautious of their own life. We're going to start with you and then wrap around this way.
Great question, thank you. My mind goes to, we need to make sure that our officers, our law enforcement officers, feel that they are part of the community and view themselves as the community. And if that means we have courses or we have classes that go over the Constitution, go over the early stages and early formation of the country, then great. When we start to have people that have buy-in and feel that they are a part of an organization and a community at large, they will have a heavier vested interest. And I think that goes from the top down. As I've said in times past, I will not consider a chief deputy at the sheriff's office that does not live in Davis County. We need to be able to have people that live here, that are among the community, that love the community, that have relationships among the community. And as we show that we have that, it'll trickle down. As we have these conversations with our line level deputies and as our sergeants that are out working, and we express this desire to have these good relationships and the fact that we're protecting our kids and we're after the hard criminals and the hard crime. We're not super upset or egregious on things like traffic or small. Yes, they need to be done, but we place emphasis where it should be. And we help those law enforcement officers understand that is what we're after. We're not after making the good citizen and the good productive members of society have a bad day. We're after the bad guys, so let's do whatever we can to find and take care of the bad guys. Thank you.
So this question to me is talking about the officers. How are we going to make sure the officers are okay? And whatever they get into, especially if they get into something that's going to be in the media. The best way I can answer that is I have experience in this area. I was involved in 2 officer-involved critical incidents where I was the shooter, Trolley Square, and then again in 2017, Officer Lovell was being assaulted by a suspect, and I was the watch commander. I was the lieutenant over the city at the time, and I responded and was able to help him safely get out of that situation where I think he was seriously injured, but I think he probably would have been killed. And because I fired my weapon in both of those incidents, I got to go on administrative leave. There was an investigation into me. It's a homicide investigation when you fire your weapon in a lethal force situation, and you have to be cleared. And we don't take those days lightly. We don't go around firing our guns off willy-nilly, but when you have to do that to protect the life of a citizen, in my case, Trolley Square many citizens, and then, or to protect the life of yourself or another officer, a fellow officer, and that's the only choice you have, you use deadly force. Well, I've been on administrative leave a few times, and since then, I've been able to have a very unique view of what our officers are going through when they get put on administrative leave. And it can be administrative leave for a shooting, officer-involved shooting, but it can be for lots of other things. I'm acutely aware of what the officer and their families are going through. Try to get through those investigations as quickly as we can, because it is awful to be on administrative leave, to be separated from your coworkers and your team. And because I'm aware of it, I make it a point to make sure our officers are taken care of.
Okay. So I touched on this a little bit, but I'll go back to it. I shared that story on Christmas Eve where I wasn't able to see my kids and I was headed to that call and I was feeling unseen, I was feeling unappreciated, and I want you to imagine for a minute, you're the person on the other side of that call, right? You're the person that's going to receive me showing up to that call and how, you know, how I might respond when I get there. So one of the things that I've enjoyed doing quite a bit, and if you're familiar with the Arbinger Institute, that's the training that we rolled out. I wrote a grant for $150,000 and rolled it out department-wide at the Weber County Sheriff's Office. And what that did is it equipped all of the officers with tools, specific tools to recognize when they were seeing individuals as an object, when they had done exactly what the question asked, right, where you see everyone as a criminal, and then gave us tools to recognize that mindset and how to get out of that mindset. And we saw great results. We didn't track it. We weren't great at tracking those results, but we saw a decrease in our use of force, a decrease in our complaints, and an increase in our productivity. They did a great study. They did a long-term implementation with the Kansas City Police Department. You can read the results. They received equal results. And that's the plan that I will implement to equip our officers with those tools to recognize that and to better interact with the community.
Let me start off real quick by commending Andy. Andy is widely known in Salt Lake County for the Charlie Square incident, and you are a hero, man, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That being said, to your question, I was that person. 10 years in, I was a patrol sergeant. I'd worked Midvale, I'd worked Gangs, I'd worked Mill Creek, some of the busiest, second to Salt Lake City, of course, areas in Salt Lake County. I was that person. I saw everyone as an object or a person. Every person I pulled over was a bad guy. Everyone was attempting to kill me. After chasing some of the baddest guys in the state, murderers, gang members, I realized I had a problem. For all the incidents I'd been through, I realized I needed help. Luckily, I did, so I chose to seek out that help. Since then, I've realized that, and that's what I said earlier, we need help. We need to help our deputies. We need to help our officers with mental health and mental health awareness. Like I said, we take our own lives by our own hand more than we are killed by bad guys or traffic accidents. That's unfortunate. That needs to be stopped. I would build out a resiliency program. There's a lot of cities and agencies across the nation that have great, they do daytime yoga sometimes. Can you believe that? Your police officers go on duty and then they do yoga in the morning. But you know what? It works. We need something to get out of this mold of, I hate people. Because I've been there, and it's not a fun place to be. So when you offer that opportunity to deputies and officers to work their way out of that rut, it helps them become a better person. When you're a better person and you're happy with yourself on the inside, you're going to treat the citizens better. So luckily here, we have pretty good following of citizens. We have pretty good support, which is amazing, and I love that. But we still need to understand that there's a point in your career where you got to recognize your issues and your problems, and to what Aaron said, find the funding. And I know they mentioned there is an LCSW at Davis County. That is amazing. That is a good starting point, but it needs to continue and go even further down to yearly check-ins for everyone in the agency. Not only yearly check-ins, but the ability to come in, open door with no questions asked, and have your issues taken care of. Thank you.
This will be your final question, and then we'll have your 3-minute summations. Let's just go from left to right, or your right to left. So we've got, you know, maybe we're in imminent crisis here, and there's things happening all over the world. May hit us pretty soon. During a crisis, how should the sheriff communicate with the public during these emergencies?
So I kind of touched on this as well, but I kind of illustrated this, and I'll go back to it. I think I had a great experience illustrating this to me back in 2020. I was actually out for a mountain bike ride, and I got a call from Assistant Chief Young from OPD, and he was the one that told me, hey, we've got a protest going on. It was a BLM protest downtown, and we think that it's going to turn to a riot. We need as many people as you can send. couple of examples of how you interact with the public. One of the things that I thought Chief Watt did great in that is Chief Watt did a social media release. He went out immediately as this thing was unfolding, and he set a clear boundary. He said, look, we will support it. We'll be there. We'll provide water and snacks for you. We'll provide you an area in order to protest, but we will not tolerate any violation of crime. If you violate any crimes, you will go down hard, and you will go to jail. And then we were there, not just Ogden, not just Weber County, but all northern Utah agencies were there in force to show, yeah, we're here, we support your right, your First Amendment right to protest, but we will not tolerate any violation of the law. That ends peacefully. 5 hours later, I find myself in the streets of Salt Lake dealing with just out-of-control riots. And that's how you communicate during crisis. One, you have to be there during crisis to lead and show leadership to your people. And then we have great tools in this day and age, social media, to get out during crisis, to get that message out as the head of your agency to the community about what you're doing and what you expect and what you need.
3 words, and Aaron touched on it: social media, social media, social media. There's agencies out there that are doing it. If you're not doing it, we're missing the ball. The majority of our citizens these days, from the top of the age range to the bottom, everyone has a cell phone. Everyone knows how to get on a news website. Everyone knows how to get on Facebook or Instagram. My goal would be to create, I know there's a standing Davis County Sheriff's page, but to have a monthly or regular check-in message, either by me or a PIO. Local city does that weekly. I've seen it on my Facebook feed. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And it doesn't have to be in times of critical need or incident. We can be doing that on a regular basis to open up those lines of communication. So when the critical incident does occur, people know where to get the information. They go to that social media website, then go look and see, okay, let's see, all right, the sheriff just briefed on X, Y, and Z. This is what I'm gonna do or where I'm gonna avoid. We need to take advantage of social media. And another thing, it's a scary word, I know, is AI. It's coming, it's here. We need to embrace it. We need to learn how to use it, to use it in a positive way to do multifaceted operations, tasks, everything. It's here and it's not going away. And now that being said, in a critical incident, obviously, news, social media, word of mouth, phone tree, there's numerous ways we can communicate that. Recently, we have updated our emergency management plan in Salt Lake County to include in our patrol cars. We have updated them with the latest up there for our sirens, that we can actually drive around cities and blast out on our loudspeakers a pre-recorded message that tells what the incident is, stay inside, lockdown, or get out of town. Whatever the case may be, it's a pre-recorded message that we can announce to the community. That's something I'd like to bring into Davis County as well, because it's just one more tool to communicate with that someone may not know. Maybe they didn't pick up their phone, maybe they didn't check the website. So there are so many different avenues that we can communicate through, and social media is one, the news outlet, word of mouth, everything. That's the route I would take the sheriff's office.
In answering your question, to deal with this problem, the solution goes far before the incident itself. Again, we need to have good relationships with all of our law enforcement agencies, with all of our fire agencies, with the state, and also with our great partner that we don't use enough, Hill Air Force Base. Now, these are great resources. I would be fooling anybody if I said, oh, the sheriff's office will take it and handle it all of itself. Yeah, maybe we can work together, but there's no way we're going to be able to accomplish these things alone. And we need to have those relationships so when those phone calls are made, we have resources at a moment's notice. And I firmly believe that that is where the focus should be leading up to anything that happens. When I was on my previous job on the military side, I was a part of a riot control unit that would respond to the Capitol and did respond to the Capitol. And this is something, there are so many resources out there that we should be aware of. We should have relationships, we should train together, and we should be able to have each other's back in the time of need. And that's where my mind really goes to is, yes, I can only do so much within my sphere of control, but if I have those relationships, I have those partnerships, we can do far more. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Jon is on the right track there. I feel like if the only time you're talking to the media is when you're in a crisis, that's not enough. we try to put out stories with we have a public engagement coordinator, manager at our office who does a really good job of highlighting the stories of what's happening in the sheriff's office weekly, monthly. We do a lot of events, if it's Santa and the sheriff, or it's trunk or treat, or junior deputy camp. We have a lot of really cool activities, even with the Citizens Academy. And that's a joint-wide effort with all of the police departments in Davis County and the sheriff's office. And putting it out in social media, as has been mentioned, but putting it out to the news, putting it out to everybody, not when it's a crisis, just to we got to tell our story, and we've got to let people in. Sometimes there's this, I don't know if it's a code of silence or what it is, where you imagine officers or deputies driving around in, darked out vehicles and keeping to themselves and being stealthy and protecting from afar. And I think you've heard today that is not how any of us want to run a sheriff's office, because that's not effective. It doesn't create a way where officers and deputies can interact with the public. I rode downtown on motorcycles. I also rode downtown on mountain bikes throughout my career, and that was a great way to ride in and talk to the business owners, talk to the people out on the streets. I would ride up in the avenues and the trails, and we do have bikes, but I would like to expand our bike program in the county, because I feel like it's much more inclusive. It's easy to talk to people. When you asked the question, immediately what I thought about was the sheriff standing in front of a camera and addressing the people, and that has to happen. But it also has to happen all the rest of the time when it's not a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Why don't we begin with our 3-minute summations from this with you?
Okay. I promise I won't go for 3 minutes. Thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the venue and for the work that's gone into setting this up so we could explain where we're coming from. And it's been good to me to hear from the other candidates. I'm sure it's been good for you all. And I do think I'm the right person for this job. I do think there are differences between us. I've heard some people say, well, whoever we get, it's going to be great because they're all good. I do think they're all good men, and they will all do a good job. But we're not all going to do the same job. And I think it would behoove all of us to try to decide who's the best fit, who will do the best job. I believe that's me, and I will work hard to make the sheriff's office the best that it can be, continue to build relationships with the partners that we have, finding new partners, trying new things, but reaching out to the community and helping them feel like they're involved. I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of that. But I envision a county where the deputies are out playing basketball with the kids in the parks. That's what I like. That's the image that I have. That's what we did when I was in Salt Lake, and it's effective. I don't want the people only seeing deputies in their communities when they're running traffic. Running traffic or speeding is important, but I don't want your only interaction with my deputies to be getting a ticket or a warning. I want your interaction with my deputies to be knowing them on a first name basis because they spend time in your neighborhood and in your community, and when you need something, you feel like you have an open line of communication where you can communicate with them. You can always call our non-emergency line. You can always call 911. But most people won't when it's not something that important, and I would like to see a community like I've described. Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been a long night. Thank you. Thank you for sticking through it. And I haven't seen anybody fall asleep yet, so hopefully now I'm talking. So thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am only one of two individuals sitting up here that has responded to your neighborhoods, and only one that currently works at the sheriff's office and in law enforcement. I've responded to your emergencies in your communities. I know who you are. I know who your family is. I know the Davis County way. I know what we're after. I know we live here because it's safe. I know we live here because it's a great place to raise kids. I want to keep it that way. I want to make sure that we preserve what is fantastic about Davis County. I can promise you that I will be fair and reasonable, but I will not be a limp wrist and a fizzle, for lack of a better word, that I will make sure that I put forth that effort. I'm accountable to you. Nothing against these gentlemen sitting up here today, all great individuals, but none of these organizations where they have been chiefs at Davis County, Weber, or Salt Lake are shining cities on a hill or shining departments on a hill. And that is what I am after, and there is no alternative. I want to be that agency where we have consistently 95+% staffing, that we have people that don't want to leave, that we have people that have bought in to the culture, bought into the society, bought into making this a great place. That is what I'm after. I am after making sure that we know what threats are on the horizon when we start dealing with AI, cybercrime, and what that effect is going to have on our individual lives, that I will be leaning into that and be aware of what's coming on the forefront. I am the most vetted candidate sitting on this stage. Every 5 years, I have to get my top secret clearance renewed with the military, and they uncover everything, wherever my investments, my financial life, and everything else. And I promise you that I will be of the utmost highest character that you deserve as citizens of Davis County. And I will not just be a warm body in a seat, but I will constantly be leaning forward and having conversations with our legislators to make sure we're on the same page and that we pass applicable common sense laws. And if there are unfunded mandates that come down, that I will fight to the death if they don't make sense and they don't protect us. And I will make sure that you're aware of those. If they are coming down and I can't stop it, I will make sure that people are aware of it, because that's what matters. Thank you.
First, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I appreciate that. I appreciate your support. And thanks for the event planners and the host, this church. Thank you very much. I want to start off by saying I want to foster a culture of family in the sheriff's office. I want to make every deputy feel like they are part of a team, that they're part of a family, as well as their family members. Through that, I want to take care of them mentally and physically and emotionally. That way, you, as my boss, will get a better service. I want to talk about the Hill, since it was mentioned before. I was up on this legislative session. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do a lot of handshaking or picture taking or anything like that. I was busy opposing and supporting bills. For the last 2 years on the sheriff's office, that has been one of my assignments as the county security chief, to be on the Hill regularly, interacting with legislators, lobbyists, to get these bills that are bad. And just on a side note, SB 262, the unmarked vehicle bill, it failed on the Senate floor. Thank you. Appreciate it. It died there. Needed to stay there. It's going to come back. I'm going to be the sheriff, along with some of the other sheriffs in the state, that will be up on that Hill during the legislative session, fighting for you, which I've already done throughout the last few years of my career. I enjoy it. I have given my life to this country and this state. I will continue to do that no matter who is elected, and I agree with what's been previously said. You have a great group of candidates up here, and you really can't go wrong. Am I the best person? That's for you to tell. I want you to tell me that. I would rather tell me that I'm the best person than I tell you, because that will be done through your actions and believing in my leadership characteristics and experience from a larger city, which, by the way, has its own issues. And yes, I do not want to see our county go down the same path that that county has. I want to keep this county small and keep it a small town feel that it's had since I grew up here. That is my goal as Davis County Sheriff, to prevent more crime from seeping in from both our neighbors to the north and the south, and keep it safer for you all to keep me employed as your boss, the Davis County Sheriff. Thank you.
I'll just echo the thanks that were already given. Thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you to those that hosted this event. And I also want to thank the other candidates, both for their service in the military and their service in law enforcement, for your willingness to be here and put yourself out there. As a citizen of Davis County, I appreciate each one of you. I want to talk a little bit about the budget. The sheriff's office takes up about 2/3 of the county budget as a whole. There needs to be a principle that guides every decision at the sheriff's office, and that's efficiency. Efficiency is just not a slogan for me for the campaign. It has been a career-long principle that I've followed. I am a lifelong Davis County resident. With my wife, I've raised my kids here, and I have served Davis County in public safety for over 19 years. I will not, as your sheriff, go to the commission and just ask for additional funding. I will use my training experience in lean principles. I will use my knowledge from my master's degree in public administration to audit every dollar, to streamline every operation, and to ensure that we provide the best public safety while safeguarding those taxpayer funds and using those efficiently with discipline. As a former chief deputy, as a jail commander of the year for the state of Utah, and as an FBI National Academy graduate, I have the experience to lead the sheriff's office on day one. I'm asking for your vote because I have the community connection to care. I have the local roots to care. I have the conservative values to protect your wallet. And I have the proven experience to keep Davis County safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Uriah Kennedy and Ingrid Bettridge, did I say it right, for moderating this debate tonight. And I also just want to take a minute to thank these four men for the service that they have given our community and our state to be servants that protect us in our It takes a special kind of person who wants to put themselves out there in harm's way to protect us. So I really thank you all for the service that you've given. I know I can't ever thank them enough. But I really appreciate them coming out tonight and allowing us to answer these questions. And another thing I want to say is it's really hard, right? I mean, we're hearing clearly four really good men answer questions, and as a delegate who they first will go to county convention, it will be difficult for us to make a decision as to who will be best to serve. And I really believe in the caucus and convention system. I don't believe through signature gathering that we can choose a candidate that best represents us, because it separates the candidate from the people. And even though someone files for signatures, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to get those signatures. And I want to encourage you guys to not maybe get your signatures, to really trust the delegates, because that way we're up close and personal. And as soon as you go to the primary, it's all about money. Who has the most money? Who has the most signs? And it becomes very impersonal and separates those candidates from the people. And frankly, it makes it really hard for us to get the best candidate, because the best candidate often doesn't have the money that it takes to run those kind of campaigns. So I want to encourage you all to go be delegates. I know what this means when I say maybe don't sign the signature packets, because it doesn't help us in getting the best candidate. So that's kind of hard for me to say, but I just am going to say it anyway. But thank you again for being here. I really, really appreciate your effort, and I hope you all enjoyed yourself. 2 weeks from tonight, we will be having the same format with Senate and House candidates, and 2 weeks after that, it will be county commission. So next week, will you bring 5 friends? Did you want to say something?
I just want to emphasize what she is saying. We had SB 54 come into place back in 2014, and it's the worst thing that's happened to this state. You've got to understand how that corrupts politics. There are too many people in our Senate that do not believe in that, so we need a royal change in our Senate right now. We could probably get a repeal passed in the House, but it's, at this point in time, is not going to pass the Senate. I've been asking Musselman, I've asked who are some of the Harper, I've asked a number of others about SB 54, and there's still too much support up there. You have to understand what that does. So when you're a delegate, I'm a state delegate and I'm a county delegate here in Davis County, just so everybody knows, and Ingrid here is also a state delegate here. So we're not just running a podcast. I'm both state and county delegate, and she's a state delegate. When you have a politician who's up there running and they have to answer to the delegates, they can stand in front of that delegate and be asked questions up and down and backwards, and they have to answer them. Every single candidate has got to recognize each individual candidate or each individual delegate and answer those questions. They'll probably visit into their homes, and they'll visit all the little meet and greets we have, all the libraries are going to have to do this. So they're going to see each and every single delegate several times. the delegates talk amongst themselves and ask, hey, did he answer this question the same way with you did he did with me? Did he change his story? Did he become more conservative or less conservative with you just because he was talking to a different person? All those are specific questions that we as delegates ask them. When it's a populist, when it's a popular competition, when money's on the line, it's just not the same type of respect. Because they can put out TV ads, radio spots, put 1 billion billboards out along the streets, and it becomes a name recognition contest where money wins every single time, and we've got to take money out of it. I had 2 senators fight with me that says, well, money's not the correct argument. How's money going to solve it? And it's very simple, because I can take a delegate that can only raise $100,000, and I can take another delegate and raise $1 million, and they're going to be equal in the caucus system. Because in the caucus system, you're going to have the delegate could raise $100,000, put up the same folding table, put the same balloons, the same pins, the same T-shirts out on the table, and talk to the same delegates. They do not have to raise a lot of money, whereas the guy with $1 million is going to have the same folding table, the same buttons, the same pins, the same T-shirts, and talk to the same delegates. It comes down to the conversation and not to the popularity contest. So signatures are out, caucus is in, we got to get rid of SB 54, and we need everybody's support to do that, because the biggest problem we have right now is there's just too many people that have no idea what the caucus system even is. The youth don't understand what it is, so it's up to you guys to promote it amongst your neighbors. Because the other power that a delegate has is every single candidate knows who their delegates are. And if you as a citizen want something answered for, you can go to your delegate and say, I need my politician to answer to this. And that delegate's probably got that politician on speed dial on his cell phone. I know I have all of ours on speed dial, and Trevor Lee and all these others, they pick up my phone like that. And I can ask them those specific questions. Say, hey, I had a constituent ask me this question. I need to get back to them. So when you vote for your delegates, make your delegates be responsive to those politicians. It gives you as a voter more power and not less power. When it's just one big group of people out there, you lose your power as a populace. And that's why population vote or popular votes do not work. The caucus system does. You had a question?
SB 54 with the signatures becomes mob rule, so to speak, whereas let's look at the difference between that and what we truly are. We're a republic. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. Nowhere in the Constitution does the word democracy even appear. But we are a republic. That's the spreading of representation, and that goes down to the delegates, and the delegates represents those people in your neighborhood. So it goes deeper than that. Whereas signatures, they're getting those at the entrances and exits of grocery stores, gas stations, wherever it's convenient. Half the time, the people who sign it don't even really know what they're signing. So, you know, and for an example, I won't say which race this was. I'm sure some of you know. But one elected official technically is not legitimate at this point. There were over 1,700 signatures short to get on the primary ballot. So that causes other problems, but yet they were allowed to continue through to the primary and ultimately win the general.
All right, thank you. One last thing I want to make everybody know. If anybody comes to caucus and they are affiliated as in another party, they cannot affiliate. Understand that. If they are unaffiliated, they can affiliate, but they cannot be a delegate. Does everybody understand that? Just your precinct chair might get that wrong, just so you know that. That's the rule that the State Central Committee set up. So everybody, thank you so much for coming. If you have a question, just come up here. Okay. What? It depends on your precinct. So if you go to utahvote.gov, you can find out what legislative district you're in. Go to Davis County Republican Party website. It will tell you there. You do not have to pre-register.